Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Dan Treble and I'm co-founder of a studio called Defiant Development. I don't know if this talk's going to be as technical as you want now, so feel free to interject with questions, anything at any time. I've given this talk once before at Unite and I rattled it off in about 35 minutes. So I need to slow down. Asking questions will help me do that. If there's anything you want to dig into, just let me know. So Defiant started in 2010. Really, we come from a background of a lot of us worked the Pandemic and THQ and Krome. And around the financial crisis, all the studios started closing, and I lost my job twice. So there wasn't a lot of development going on in Brisbane at the time, but there was a lot of talented people, and me and my business partner Morgan, we really wanted to carry on working with those talented people. So we set it up largely to just carry on working with everyone in Brisbane. We formed a great people. We've got about 10 staff at the moment, but we scale up and down with contractors to about 20. When we initially started, we had the crazy idea of writing our own engine from scratch, because that's what we were used to. And we were also trying to do that with favors from friends as well, favors from artists, and that doesn't work at all. We quickly learned that wasn't going to work. So what happened was we ended up moving to Unity, and we had started it with basically permission from our wives at the time. They carried on working, and we went to a place and did a thing and didn't earn any money. So it's quite hard. We did some really big variety of projects. Our first game was mobile. It was made for touch. We were trying to make something that could only exist on mobile. Then we did a lot of augmented reality projects to pay the bills. One of them was for the Dallas Mavericks. That was a little basketball game that appeared on their playoff. No, not their playoff tickets. Their whatever the big final is. Sorry. I did a game with a movie director, Robert Connolly, called Walkout. Actually, it wasn't a game. It was essentially a technical demo, vertical slice. And then we did a mobile, free-to-play RPG, kind of Diablo-like. But the games you've probably heard of, we published a game called Ski Safari. A couple of guys in the office made it while they were working for us, and they were kind enough to let us publish it. It's been incredibly successful. But if you came here to find out how we did it, I'm not quite sure. I think there was a large element of luck in there. Like, it was a really super polished game, but I don't know. If I thought it was repeatable, we'd make another 10 Ski Safaris. Absolutely. Was the what, sorry? It was also made in Unity, yeah. And it was made before any of the 2D support came along. So we wrote all our own 2D kind of animation to switch meshes to do animations. And I can't take any credit for it, but Brendan wrote all his own physics as well. It doesn't use any of the Unity physics. It's all custom. On from that, we reskinned it with Adventure Time, mostly because there's a lot of guys in the office that really like Adventure Time, and that did quite well for us.
How did you negotiate the license for Adventure Time?
Cartoon Network approached us to do another game, to do a Ben 10 based game. So we did a Ben 10 game. It did okay. It was a card trading game. And we were really, really happy with it. It did okay financially, but beyond that, they wanted to do another game with us. And it seemed like a natural fit to reskin Ski Safari in Adventure Time. So that's how that came about. I think they approached us initially because of the success of Ski Safari.
Did it do well?
It did what?
Did that do well in your branded version, the reskin version?
It did, yeah. It did. it was a fraction of the original Ski Safari, but it was Cartoon Network's best-selling mobile game last year or the year before. So yeah, they were really pleased with it. A current game is Hand of Fate. It's a mix of card deck building and combat. It's out on Steam Early Access at the moment, and it's coming, fingers crossed, to PS4 360 in a couple of weeks. And I'm going to subject you to a quick trailer of it. I'm sorry. So that's mostly the game I'm here to talk about. Now, you notice all those games are very, very different, but they're all apart from Walker were made in Unity. Walker was made in UDK. And I guess it goes to show kind of how versatile Unity is and how versatile the team is as well. They're all very different, but they all share a lot of similar processes in terms of how we approach the development. And that's what I'm here today. Now, good thing about this slide is I don't even need it because everyone has source control, don't they? Everyone?
Who knows what source control is?
Good. You can't make games and not use source control. You will drive yourself crazy. Initially, we had a lot of trouble with Unity because Unity didn't support saving assets as text at all. And a couple of years ago, it would only save assets as binary. And if you've got it as binary, you can't have multiple people work on any part of the project. This was a massive bottleneck for us. But it's getting better. It's not free of bottlenecks, however. We use an extension called NGUI for the UI, and that's really troublesome in terms of I don't know if anyone's used NGUI, but and some smiles here. If you've got elements that want to stretch to the full screen. What it will do is it will stretch it to the full screen on your computer. It will change that number in the file to your game, your screen dimensions, and everyone who runs the game will change it to their screen dimensions. So very quickly, they've got massive merge conflicts on that file because everyone's trying to change it to their different dimensions. So what you're going to do is you're going to be really careful of this attribute called execute in edit mode because it's going to dirty your scenes. It's going to give you a lot of pain, so you can take that off. The good thing about Unity 5 is they've tried to address some of the merging problems. So they've got Unity stores its text scenes in a container called YAML, and they've got a custom YAML merger in 5, which kind of picks apart the hierarchy of your scenes and tries to work out if I've changed this part of the scene and someone else has changed this part, and there's no conflicts, then it can put the scene back together again. I said it wasn't technical, but that's fairly technical. Good.
Excuse me. Apparently they also hired the NGUI guy, contracted him out to build NGUI basically into...
Yeah, but then he left.
Yeah. But didn't they get NGUI basically built in now for the latest version?
Yes. Yeah. It's got a couple of deficiencies over NGUI that annoy me. So on Ski Safari Adventure Time, the iPad screen is massive. It's 2,000 and something by, I I can't quite remember, but it's massive. If you want to run the same user interface on that as you do on a 3G, you can't. The 3G hasn't got the same memory to store the big user interface graphics. So what you need to do is you need to have multiple resolutions of your UI, and NGUI supports that through something called proxy atlases, but there's no support in Unity GUI yet for it. NGUI has a sorry.
You know about canvas scanners, right?
Yes. But in terms of the graphical assets, they'll use bitmap versions of your assets. But we found having the full bitmap chain and allows it to use bitmaps. The GPU is kind of lazy and will go down to a lower level bitmap than it should use, and your graphics will end up looking blurry. We've had. Yeah, we just have two versions of the Atlas, no bitmap in, and we switch them out.
He already made the game. He's not going to switch to anything now. He's doing new stuff as well. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and just compare.
Well, I'm doing the same stuff. That's what I mentioned.
The other thing that NGUI has and that we make a lot of use of, the concept of panels. So a panel is essentially a mesh. It maps to a model, and as long as nothing changes within that hierarchy, you can move around the panel. You can translate that as much as you like, and no mesh is rebuilt. So we use that for scrolling lists in shops. If you want your shop list to scroll really fast, it's one panel. It stays as one chunk of mesh, and nothing gets rebuilt. If anything changes within it, if you've got like a flashing thing in your shop list, then the whole mesh is going to get rebuilt, and that's going to cause quite a slowdown as it builds up the vertex buffer and submits it again. NGUI has that concept. Unity GUI doesn't yet. Their suggestion is to use a canvas for that, so they have a canvas for your own shop window, but they weren't sure that if you move the canvas, whether it wouldn't cause the mesh to be rebuilt underneath. So I'm pushing them at the moment. I'm a thorn in their side at the moment, trying to sort these things out. But yeah, I think the next project we're probably going to use Unity GUI, but I'm going to miss multi-resolution atlases. And the other thing we use were proxy fonts. So Ski Safari Adventure Time shipped in 6 languages. And the Asian fonts are massive. We couldn't fit them all in one texture. We couldn't have them all loaded at one time. So every text element in the UI uses a proxy font. And when we switch languages, we switch the proxy font to the font that has the characters for that language, which really helps. And I don't think there's an equivalent way in Unity GUI yet. That was off topic.
I've got just 2 questions related to source control. What do you use? And how do you coordinate multiple people working on the same scene?
Oh, yeah. So I've got a confession about the scene thing coming. So we use, it doesn't matter what source control you use. It's people get into religious debate. If Perforce had its 20 user license, free 20 user license when we started, we'd use Perforce, but it didn't. So we picked Subversion, and it's fine. We did try and use, it's fine. We did try and use Mercurial for a bit, but I was having difficulty explaining to the artists exactly how the conflicts were working. I was having difficulty. At that time, Mercurial, you had to submit a version, you had to submit every changed file in the depot. It had to be absolutely clean, and it had to be clean when you did a get as well, or a pull, and which meant you had to be running really two copies of the depot, one clean one and one that you were working in, and you were pushing and pulling between. I could not explain this to the artists. I was having difficulty using it myself. So Subversion is really good because everyone kind of understands it. That's where we ended up. And in terms of coordinating, well, the UI scene is a reoccurring bottleneck for us. It never frickin' merges. while we got rid of those problems, those specific problems in NGUI, we've got lots more problems in there as well, where you saw the cards flying around in the video. Each of those cards is a UI panel, and every time it rebuilds the scene, things get dirty and orders change, and it dirties up the file. So we have a real... We're going to try much harder this project to get to the point where the UI scene merges, because yeah, it was a real bottleneck for us. We got there on Ski Safari, but it was a much smaller project. So we use something horrible, something from the 90s. We use exclusive checkout, and it's worse than that. It's a card that we hand around the office and say who's got that scene checked out. So the only upside of this is we talk to each other more, and we say how long you're going to be with it, going to move on. Yeah, I don't want to do that again. But this talk turned out to be a lot of kind of guilty secrets more than anything. This is just me unloading all the bad things we do and still make games.
I've got to ask, well, you know, from Chrome, I've done a lot of Subversion. You know, you can actually set a property on a file in Subversion that says it requires exclusive lock to make it writable.
Yep.
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 So you still use the card.
Still use the card. I've seen that go wrong where you've got external people working on the project, and you're like, someone's left it locked and they're off-site, right. And now I'm messing around on the server in weird Yeah. I like talking to people. Like if we have to, I don't mind talking to people. It's always interesting to know, like, what are you doing that's so important that I can't have it right now? So yeah, hopefully next project, between the merging, between actually the Unity GUI is much better at merging than NGUI ever is. I've not seen any problems there. So we shouldn't need that exclusive checkout, and we can go back to not talking to each other. The other thing, our projects are getting bigger and bigger. I guess the talk's called Scaling Unity, making bigger games with Unity. If you can, don't make bigger games with Unity, because they'll cost more money for you to make all the assets. They might, if they cost more money, there's no guarantee that you're going to make the money back. Just make smaller games. Don't do it. This is size in gigabytes of the repositories, and you can see from Rocket Bunny barely on the graph through to Handafay, which is up to about 30 gig of source assets at the moment. Which what it does mean is development gets slower. We have a couple of people that work off-site, and because of the internet, I think I calculated it would take 4 or 5 days on our terrible internet to download the repository for the first time. We have a guy in Melbourne who did some of the sound for us, and we have a composer in Brisbane who did some more sound for us, and it was quicker just to send them a hard drive initially than it was to do that initial checkout. Yeah, that's disappointing. We could do better work. We could do more work with faster internet. It's not all about... it's mostly about the up speed. The download speed is tolerable, but for creative people, the upload speed is... I tell you, the worst thing at the moment, we got to upload build to Microsoft, and we failed a couple of those. Our build size is about 4 gig. So that takes the best part of a day to upload, and then they QA it. Sony build is 2 times 2 gig, and our Steam build is 3 times 2 gig for Windows, Mac, and Linux. The good thing about Steam is it sends it works out the delta. It works out just the parts of it that's changed. So the Steam's really quick to upload, but uploading the Sony and the Microsoft is terrible. One of my friends has got NBN. I did drive to one of their houses to upload the build just because it's so bad. Bigger projects have worse compile time. Obviously, the great thing about Unity is how quick it is to iterate. And I've worked on an engine with that quick iteration before. We dreamt of that. But as you get bigger and bigger projects, that slows down. One of the things we used the old legacy asset system, legacy animation system, because we needed events in our animation. We needed events for when the sword was going to strike or when particles were going to come off the feet, for footsteps, and the new system didn't support that at the time. And to get the events, we save out all the animations as text. And every time you press the play button, Unity loads in all that text, and it got progressively slower and slower and slower. So this time we've bitten the bullet, and we're going to go with Mechanim and hopefully not have those horrible text loads in there, because Mechanim supports events in the animation without you having to export it to text, which is good. Task tracking. Okay, so I've been making games for 15 years now, and in that time, I don't think we've got any better at predicting projects, not one bit. All we've got better at is admitting how bad we are at tracking projects and dealing with the changes. So I guess the learning about Agile and learning about kind of your confidence level of what's going to happen into the next 1 to 2 weeks is massively higher than your confidence level for the next 3 to 4 months, which is massively higher than the confidence level of 1 to 2 years out. So dealing with that and knowing that you're going to change course and being able to change course is really important. The original Hand of Fate game didn't have a character in that represented the card dealer at all. It didn't have a deck building aspect to it either, but we felt these things were needed along the way, and we had to change course, and we blew out our scope. But we were lucky in that we had the runway, the money to do that. So we initially brought over our task tracking system from Pandemic, which was cards on a board with times on them and the name of the task. And that worked really well for us for a while. It's very much like the exclusive checkout. We had to stand up in the morning and everyone pointed to the card. But it takes a lot of effort to run that system. We migrated to like a software as a service one called On Time, and that essentially just lets someone print out the cards to go on the board. It didn't. The rest of the team could use it, but we didn't really get any buy-in from the team on that at all. So now we are using Trello, which is as good as it gets from what we found. Is really, really good, and it rocks. And we use it for all our tasks, and we just having the ability to put screenshots in there and chat about bugs and things, chat about tasks and bugs. We use it for everything. Also use another plugin for it that allows you to estimate times as well, and gives us an idea of the burn down on that.
So how many boards do you have for one project?
2. We should have 1. It's silly having 2, but it made sense. It made sense splitting out the bugs at the end there from the tasks. So yeah, when we're not in massive crunch end of project mode, I should say that we've never worked overtime on any of our games yet. So that's something we're really proud of. We don't think you make good decisions when you're working overtime. I think it's good for your staff. We don't think it's good for your end product. So yeah, we really try not to work any overtime. But our normal sprint is 4 weeks. The idea of being the end of those 4 weeks, we can produce something tangible, ideally something we can play. Sprints start out with planning, where the creative director, technical and artist, we argue about what's important to the project in the short term and try and prioritize those tasks that are important to the project. We have a daily stand-up. I mentioned that before. mostly to keep me honest. So I have to get up and say what I'm doing that day, what I did or didn't do the day before. And yeah, I find that helps just keep everyone honest. And everyone's the same, everyone's accountable. So it's good. That's our stand up there. 11 a.m., so it's pretty relaxed. At the end of the 4 weeks, we have a demo day where we get around and chat about show off what we've been working on. And the thing that we find is this really helps everyone get an overview of what's happening in a project. It's really easy to just be focused on your thing and lose track of the big picture. But seeing everyone else's work really helps bring that all together. So, the asset store. Is everyone aware of, obviously Unity's got an asset store built in? It really is a game changer from our perspective. Back in the dark days of the internet, if you wanted a skin shader, or if you wanted anything, you make it yourself. There might be some game development books on it, but there was nothing you could go and buy that plugged into your engine straight away. So from that perspective, it's an absolute game changer. It's awesome. I don't think we'll ever get too big a company where we wouldn't look to buy something on the asset store first. Even if we intend to do something ourselves, we'll often buy a similar asset off the asset store just to study it and see what they used for the user interface, see what problems they faced. We did buy like a ragdoll creator called Ultimate Ragdoll Creator or something. It was terrible. But even the terrible ones, we learned some tricks about creating ragdolls that we then used in our own one. If you do mobile, obviously all the Prime 31 plugins, they're pretty awesome as well. So there's a lot of assets in Hand of Fate from the asset store. I'm going to go through some of them. Amplify color there. Something I really wanted to, it was really interesting to me, the color grading of the game, and something I was intending to write myself, but it was quicker just to buy it off the asset store, and it came with documentation, and the artists liked that. My one would have never come with documentation, and it plugs straight into Photoshop. We used C input for the keyboard input. That was a tip from Sean from Lunar Lander. And in control for, if you're going to do anything gamepad based, you really want in control because it takes away the pain of mapping the billions of gamepads to the same interface. This is 2 screenshots of the game. Top, we're about 2 months in March 2013. We've just made a demo for GDC, and we've gone there trying to pitch it to people. And then bottom, October 2014, it's pretty much done at this stage. So it's been a really long project, and it's been about 2 years. And if we run through the stuff, I'll show you how the asset store really helped us. So initially, the skeletons at the top were from our previous game. They were from Hero's Call. You notice the skeletons have been replaced in the bottom. It was one of our art director's dreams, and I think he's done it this project to concept and create every character from scratch. He didn't want to buy anything off the asset store for the characters this time. But to get us started, those skeletons were great. The trees are all from the big environment pack, and then they ended up shipping. The rocks were from the top-down mobile pack. One of the things that really lifted our quality bar was an asset called Marmoset Sky Shop, and that's all about applying cube map lighting to your models. And they've got some great terrain shaders and grass shaders there. But we also use them on the characters as well. Like we have a really good character modeler, and he creates fantastic normal maps and But the trouble with the normal direct lighting is everything that's in shadow, you don't see any of the normal map at all if it's just direct lighting. But if you've got the marmoset cube map affecting it from all directions, you get a lot more value out of your normal maps, and especially the metallic surfaces as well. So that really added to our characters. Bought a skin shader from the asset store as well. Again, I'd written my own one. It was all right. It wasn't nearly as good as the one off the asset store. Where we get you can't really see it there, but where we get the most bang for buck out of that is on the dealer when he's close up at the card table. Then things that aren't in the top, they're in the bottom. Things that we've added on the way. We've got fog, distance-based fog, height-based fog at the ground there, and then a lot of bloom as well. One reoccurring problem we've had is that we've really pushed 32-bit Unity to the limit, to the point where it's crashing on us a lot because it keeps running out of memory. And I'm not blaming Unity for this because we could be better at how we were managing our memory. And there are some tricks to do that. So yeah, we're constantly running out of memory. One thing to note is on Windows, the way the processors work, you get 3 gigabytes of memory, and on Mac you get 2.6. So that 400 megabytes can become really important if you're running out. So we moved our build machine from Windows to Mac. Really, the actual solution is to dynamically load things. So instead of having in Unity, I'll back up a second, anything that's referenced by the scene, anything that's referenced by that, anything that's referenced on the dependency chain, if you've got a texture at the bottom, that's loaded when you load the scene. So unless you do work, there's no dynamic loading of anything. So in Hand of Fate, all the art on the cards, on the front of the cards, is referenced by the load scene, and that's about 300 meg worth of images just there, and that's all dragged in as well. So really what you want to do is you want to put them in the resources directory. In the resources directory, you can dynamically load stuff by its path name. So you want to do that, or you want to do asset bundles. Now, every time I touch asset bundles, I lose a week of my life, and I come out no better. They're terrible, but I believe they get a lot better in 5. We avoided them this project because I'm no good at them. If you do have a build machine making your build, and we'll get to that in a minute, if you run with no graphics, that can save you a ton of memory, and that can mean you can do builds when you've got virtually no memory at all. Another trick was that when Unity builds the resources directory, it also has the first scene of your game loaded. So if your first scene is really heavy and your resource directory is heavy, as in our case, you ran out of memory really quick. But if you make your first scene a tiny kind of stub loader, then you can get a lot further with no memory. Can't wait for Unity 5. We started using it for the next project now, and it's got 64-bit builds for all the platforms, so we can be lazy again, which is great, until it's a problem.
When you say use the resources directory, doesn't that load everything into memory as soon as you run? So if you have redundant assets in there, they also get loaded in? No, so the resource directory, nothing's loaded in there by default. It makes an archive of all the assets in there and their dependencies, and it's up to you to initiate a load from something in there. So the worst thing you could do is you could have one asset that referenced all the other assets, put them in the resource directory, and you load that first one. Well, that's just going to drag everything in as well. You've got to be careful about the dependency chain on that and just pick in what you need. Okay, so what slide are we on? Build machine. Obviously, the point of a build machine
is to point the big finger of blame at whoever broken the build. And you should ideally, you should have a build machine. Our build machine sends nasty emails as well. And not only that, but if you happen to break the build, then you get the build break-in. It's a little teddy. It's a domocon. Comes to sit on your desk for shame. If you're shipping multiple configurations of any build, and chances are you're shipping Android, iOS, you may be shipping Amazon, or in our case, you're shipping Steam, PS4, Xbox, and then on Steam you've got Linux, Mac, and PC. You don't want to sit at your desk and do all those builds because that takes a long time. So you want a build machine that's just sitting in the background, spitting out builds and warning you if anything's gone wrong. And I've done this a couple of times. Every time you submit a handmade build, there's a good chance you're going to make a mistake. And I do, and I get lost, and I submitted the wrong build before, and there's been pretty bad consequences. On Ski Safari Adventure Time, we actually, it went live with the debug menu enabled. So people could just give themselves currency, and that was pretty disastrous. So we had to pull that down off the App Store in about 2 hours. And there you go. There should have been someone after me to test that, but if you're gonna make a build machine, Jenkins is really awesome. It's free, and there are plugins for Unity, there's plugins for Xcode, there's plugins to upload to TestFlight, there's plugins to upload to Amazon. It's pretty easy to get it to upload to Steam from there as well. It doesn't take too much to set up, and there's a lot of information out there. The other thing we like to do on a build machine is we like to graph as much as we can, so we can see when things go wrong. So that's our build machine from a couple of months ago. It's spitting out PS4 and Steam builds and Xbox builds. This is a graph of the calculated distribution size for Ski Safari Adventure Time. So on iOS, it's pretty important if you want to stay under it's a 100 meg limit at the moment. So people can download off a 3G or 4G connection as opposed to needing a Wi-Fi connection. So we graph the delivery size every build, so we can see if we've popped it. We can go back to that build and see who checked in the uncompressed textures that pushed you over, and then you can go and blame them. We take things a little bit further on a build machine as well. So this is a level from Hand of Fate, and this is as you see in the editor with the camera zones and things. But it might be possible to do, I don't know. There's a grid of yellow dots on there. Yeah, you can just about make that up. And what those yellow dots represent is we've got the navigation mesh, which is where the characters can run around. Within that navigation mesh, we found safe places that you can reach from the player start position and that are unobstructed by anything else. So we use those places for when characters have fleeing behaviors and they need to move as far as they can that way, but they need to move to a safe place. They need to know that they're going to be unobstructed in that move. So the good thing about those places is we also know that they're places that the player can run to. And what we do on the build machine is we set up a dummy player in each of those spots. That causes the camera system to move to, because the camera system is quite static, I guess. There are zones that define camera angles and a bunch of parameters on the camera, including the image effects and things like that. So we can move the camera around the level, we can simulate it. And we do that on the build machine. And what we do is while that's happening, we save off all the statistics for how many draw calls we've got, how many texture we're using at that point, how many objects are shadowing, the render time, the amount of vertices, everything that Unity can give you really in the top right-hand corner there. So once we've done that, we do that for every level, and we were doing that every night. That gives you an idea of of the worst spots in the game. From that, let's go to the next slide. We generate big tables, and there's a lot of metrics there, but the one that we really wanted to optimize was draw calls, and that's because on console you've not got a lot. Well, they've got a lot of processors. They've got, I don't know, 6 or 8 processors. Each processor itself is not that fast. And Unity is incredibly single-threaded. Everything you do on Unity runs on one thread. So all the rendering happens on the one thread, and all your script happens on one thread as well. So it's quite easy to get CPU bound on the consoles, which was a shock to us. So to alleviate that, we had to optimize it from 2 sides. We had to optimize our scripts a lot, but we also had to get our draw calls right down. So you can see there, the worst level at that time has 2,300 draw calls, which is pretty high. You're not going to get that on a mobile game, on a mobile platform, so easily. High-end PCs can do that without problems. The low-end PCs can't. So using the stats and a couple of processes which I'll go into, we got that down and down and down. The other thing to note is we have 120 scenes in the game, which is just ridiculous, and a lot of them are variations of another one. And that was a silly idea, because if you optimize one scene, you've got to go and optimize its variation as well. So that generated a lot more work for us than we should have. We should have approached that differently. So this is how the game actually shipped, and that's the same level that's highlighted, and its average draw calls are down to 315. So we really, really had to work hard to get those draw calls down. Things that we found were big problems were the temptation is to put water in that reflects everything, and that doors everything again for the reflection. So you instantly double the amount of stuff you're drawing. Not only that, it doesn't draw the reflection deferred, which means lights in theory cost a bit less. It draws the reflection forward rendered, so lights cost a lot more. The other thing we were doing is our foliage. We had a tree, like a leaf shader, that would just draw 2 passes, so you could see both sides of the leaf. It wouldn't cull it, and the way that was structured with the multi-pass shader, that stopped Unity batching the draw calls at all. So that meant every tree was a draw call. We had to get a bit clever with that. Where we wrote a custom shader that would flip the normal based on which direction the polygon was facing. So it looked lit and it looked fine from both sides, but you could do it in one pass. It was just one draw call, and it batched again. Something that we've been historically bad at is QA. We've being a small studio, you initially rely on your friends and family to test the game. And while my mom wants to play Ski Safari quite a lot, she's got no interest in Hand of Fate. You burn through your friends and family really quickly. So what have we done about that? Well, we've actually been really lucky. We ran a Kickstarter for Hand of Fate, and we got. It's a really nerve-wracking running a Kickstarter, and we did about 4 weeks of preparation, making the video and getting the page ready and everything. And at that point, we launched it out, and a week later we launched Ski Safari Adventure Time, which was a really bad idea because our heads were in 2 places. But through the Kickstarter, I was really scared about kind of what feedback we get and whether people go, well, this is just terrible. But it turned out that the people, obviously the people you attract are really passionate about it, and they wrote pages and pages and pages of constructive and really well thought out feedback. And that was almost worse, because it was like, the game's broken, and they're right, and they've and they've really expressed it well, and we're like, oh God. Not only that, they gave us a lot of free QA as well, and really passionate QA. The kind of stuff you can't buy, which is just amazing. So we didn't go into Kickstarter for that aspect of it, but I'd do it again just for that aspect. It was really, really good. From that, we went on to early access, and again, we got a lot of quality feedback and realized the game could be much better. We thought we were launching out early access at, let's say, 80% finished. In hindsight, we probably launched out 60% finished because the people on early access have really pushed us to make a better game. And that's been great, but it's been hard. The quality of feedback has been almost as good as the Kickstarter, and again the QA as well. For the end of the project, we actually had a full-time QA lead in, which, if you can afford it, was invaluable as well. We couldn't have done console without that person. Console is really, really strict when it comes to technical requirements. Which is good. It means you're getting it pushed as hard, and you're getting a better product overall for it. But we couldn't have done that without a full-time QA person. One thing we've dabbled with in the past has been trying to stop people pirating the game, and the outcome of this is ultimately don't bother. It's a waste of your time. It doesn't help make your game better. It won't help the people who like your game like it anymore. What we found is spend time making a better game. Don't spend time on the two people here. So there's people who just download your game, and there's people who buy your game. And there's such a small intersection between the people who would have bought it if they couldn't pirate it, that it's not worth spending any time trying to get those people to buy the game. It's better to try and make the customer circle bigger. And actually, the Hand of Fate's up on Pirate Bay, and it's up on a couple of others. And we have analytics on the Steam page, and you can see people coming in from the Pirate Bay to the Steam page. I was like, oh, that's cool. They're sending traffic to us, kind of thing. And the good thing about early access is that the build on the Pirate Bay is really old, and that makes me a bit sad that it's old. But the build is better now. But at least, because we keep updating the Steam build, there's a reason to go and get the Steam build, and we're really active on the forums. You know, if you've got feedback, we'll tell you you're wrong. I'm only joking. so there is a good reason to buy it, and yeah, there's as a programmer, it's quite fun trying to come up with ways of locking people out of the game, but ultimately, well, on mobile at least, it's anyone. You can't secure a game unless it's from the server side, and it's 100% from the server side, and that adds a lot of development budget to your game, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and I know people do that successfully, but it's probably not for you ultimately. So yeah, don't bother. Localization. What we do is...
Can I just interject briefly?
Yeah.
One thing we found that really surprised us, we made a game that's like, and I mean, apart from the story we have with the piracy, but we thank the player in the game for buying the game. Like, thank you, this is great, you bought the game. And we get so many emails from pirates who feel guilty when they see that message. No one bought the game.
That's awesome. So yeah, localization. We are trying to ship everything in multiple languages. So that means when the artists put text in the textures, I get really angry, I shout and cry, try and keep any text out of textures if at all possible. But a great start to do it is we just use a Google Docs spreadsheet, and we have all our English language, have our keys, and have the value for the language in the first 2 columns. And then there's a formula you can use in Google Docs to translate that into other languages. So we translate it automatically into 6 languages. And that really just checks that we've got, we can support how long German is, because German's much longer. It checks that we've got all the characters in the font. It checks that if you change the language to Japanese and you can read English, something's gone wrong. It's just a good way of checking. We'd never ship Google translated text because that is offensive to people. The good thing is you can also send it off to translators in that format as well. They'll take that. We did Arabic on Ski Safari Adventure Time, and if you can avoid doing Arabic, do. It's really quite hard because Arabic's a right to left language, not a left to right language, which means really you should flip the whole layout of your UI for it to make sense. Buttons that move forward should be on the left, and buttons that move back should be on the right. So we didn't do that, but we did do the text, and that required a lot of work to flip it. Also, most characters combine when they're next to each other to form a new character as well, so you have to account for that. And the line, if you've got text that does line breaks for right to left, line breaks don't work for left to right. You have to come up with a new way of doing line breaks as well, which is really tough. There was an asset, and I can't remember its name, but it handles the merging of characters into the new ones. So you can run it through that, and it reverses it in place. So you can treat it as a right to left. Sorry, no, you can treat it as a left to right string, but it's reversed in place, if that makes sense. So you can do layout like it's left to right, but it's actually right to left.
Do you reckon it was all worth it? A lot of work.
Very hard to say. Probably not for Arabic, but Ski Safari Adventure Time was really popular in Korea for a bit, and really popular in Russia as well. Before their currency went crazy, we found that Russia was a massive market and up every year, so it was worth doing Russian. And we've translated Hand of Fate into Russian as well, so we'll see how that does.
What's that translation service that costs money? What are you referring to?
They all cost money.
Sorry, is this an automated one, or are we talking about hiring translators?
Most of them, from the ones we found now,
Just what's that, 8 to 20 cents per word then?
one service is 8 cents a word, and another service is 20 cents per word, and they have different tiers of quality. So there's like business quality, and then there's I'm going to get it Google translated, and then I'm going to have a native speaker make it not wrong.
Is professional services, you don't bother trying to go into Elance and notice and hire translators?
No, and basically that's what the companies are doing themselves. They have translators all over the world, and they're essentially doing that Elance part of it and creaming some off the top. But even if you get the cheap, I'm going to have someone Google translate it and then make it read properly, it's still 8 cents a word, and that adds up quite a lot. Like we've got Ski Safari Adventure Time has 3,000 words in it, but Hand of Fate has 55,000 words in it. So you start multiplying that up by 20 cents per language, and we've got 6 languages. That gets expensive really quickly. So don't have wordy designers like we do.
You didn't do the voiceovers, it's just that they
No,
the subtitles?
just the subtitles, yeah.
That would have been even worse.
Yeah, the voice actor was about the same amount of money as one language, so yeah, it probably would have doubled it. Yeah, so be mindful of that when you're writing lots and lots of words, if you want to put it out in lots of languages.
For anyone who does it, just to mention, icons are your friend. Whenever you use a picture instead of a word, it saves you money.
As long as your icons are universal, that you don't confuse people.
Yeah, but that's
Like a floppy disk for a save might not work anymore.
Actually, on that note, I was just thinking, there's actually I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. I found a thing recently that's brilliant. There's this whole set of iconography that's actually designed to be universal. It's all the stuff they use in airports and this kind of stuff. So and they're meant to be cross-cultural, because of course you can't stick an icon in an airport if it's not going to work for cross-culture, because people won't know that that's a bathroom and that's an exit. So there's some stuff like that you can actually look up for looking for cross-cultural stuff. It doesn't work for everything that like save. I doubt they've got a save game icon.
But yeah, if you can avoid it and just make Crossy Road with minimal language, then probably just make Crossy Road. So we, prior to starting the company, we were console, but for most of Defiant's life, we've been in mobile, and we've been having people shout in our ears about free-to-play and analytics and A/B testing and all this. And we did a free-to-play game, and I'm not going to say we botched it, but it wasn't great. And if not great free-to-play gamers botching it. But there are lessons that you can take from that to your other games, your Steam game. One of them was, and I'll cover this in a minute, A/B testing your store art. You can still use analytics, even if you're not trying to make someone press a buy button. You can still use analytics to make your game better, and there are a lot of ways you can do that. And advertise, we've actually had quite a lot of success running Google ads for our game. So if you've got a mobile game, the chances are you can't afford the cost per user to buy users for your game. So I don't know what it is at the moment, but let's say it's about $3 per user to get them on mobile. That's a lot of money, and it means that they're going to have to spend on average more than $3 in your game. Now, the good thing about our game on Steam is it's $25 at the moment, and that means we take home 17 for each user, because I think it's 70-30 split. So it does mean that you can advertise quite heavily to get users before you hit that 17 mark, which is, so we ran some Google ads for the game, and we found that worked really quite well. It got you can pick what sites it runs on, so we were finding gaming related sites to a degree, and it worked well for a bit, but it didn't work forever, so we've turned them off now. With our store art, everyone's aware of what an A/B test is. Yeah. So in this case, it's a A, B, C, D, E, F test, and that's 6 different versions of our banner that you're going to see in Steam. That's how you're going to be introduced to the game if it appears in the list. And what you can do is quite easily on Facebook, although it's getting harder at the moment, you can set up a test that will run those 6 adverts and send people to your Facebook page, and you can see what people want to click on the most. Because really, if you're in that list in Steam, if someone doesn't click on your game, they're never going to see it, they're never going to buy it, you've lost them. So you want them to click on it. We ran that test for those 6 images, and we ran a couple of variations on them. Once we did that, we put it into Steam, and Steam allows you a way of testing how good your art is. So that one, the top right image was the one we went for, and it got a 0.17% click-through rate in Steam. Now, Steam say the average is 24, so it's below average. Even though we've done a round of testing, it's not great. So we're a bit sad about that. And we did another round of testing with these images, and no one liked the bottom right image in the studio. But you can guess which one one. So the bottom right image came off, and we put the winner from last time in. That's at the top left as our control, and the bottom right did double the clicks of the top left one. So okay, can we validate this by putting it back on Steam? And we did that through a Google advert. So we put it back on Steam and did another test to validate it, and that got our click-through rate up to 0.60, which is a big success. We're really pleased about that. So I don't know quite why people click on that bottom right one. It's probably the faces, but it's made all our artists unhappy because they're like, I hate that image. Are you gonna, like every texture, are we gonna put that on a Google ad to see which texture people like best? So yeah, it's really got the artists offside, but it's has a lot more clicks, which is good. So talking about analytics, you don't have to be trying to get people to press the buy button all the time. Analytics used to be for making your game better. And one of the things that we do is we find a lot of people on the forums say, the game's too hard, or the game's too easy, and it's hard pleasing everyone. Obviously, there's a big range there of what people would like the game to be. Have we try and back up what people are saying by how well they're doing through the game. So we have 12, 13 kind of mini bosses throughout the game, and we're tracking the success rates against those bosses, successes per attempt for each build. So you can see different builds in different lines there, and we're looking to smooth out that line all the time, and to ultimately to validate what people are saying on the forums, to saying, well, is the lizard jack too hard now? Was it too easy before, or that? So it's really important, like to try and back up what people are saying on the forums with some metric you can look at. Using Unity, we surprise ourselves with the same problems at the end of the project every time. We make these mistakes. Too many draw calls. So we talked about this earlier. We've always got too many draw calls. Oh yeah, too many stacked alpha planes will cause you draw calls. Decals causing those draw calls problems. Yeah, the grass was another problem. The Unity terrain system is not great, and the way they draw grass is not great. It could be a lot better. But there are things you can do to decrease the draw calls. Point light shadows were really, really hard. So and get technical again now. So the skin shader on the dealer, that draws in forward rendering mode, where everything else is deferred. Now what Unity does is that shadows, the arms receive shadows and the arms cast shadows. And because the rest of the scene is draw deferred, if there was a point light just here, it would draw shadow volumes for that point light. For deferred mode, it draws a deferred screen. Then what it does in its infinite wisdom, it draws shadow volumes for that point light again in the same frame and does it for your arm. So anytime you've got forward rendering stuff interacting with point lights or spotlights, it's going to cost you a lot. Hopefully they're going to fix that soon. I've certainly been in their side at them about it. Another thing, using C#, you're always going to have too many allocations thrashing your garbage collect. And no matter how fast your PC is, a garbage collect will cause you to drop a frame if you're going for 60. Fortunately, they're really easy to track down. If you've got the Unity profiler open, you can see what method in your source code is allocating memory, and it's usually quite easy to work out how not to allocate memory there. One of the nastier problems we leave for ourselves is when we use too many coroutines. So coroutines they're like threads that can sleep and that can wake up. And they're really useful for saying, I want to sleep and I want something to happen in the future. And they're fine for that use. But what we've done in the past is we've tied a lot of game code and a lot of user input up in coroutines. So we'll have a coroutine that's waiting for a button press from you or waiting for a decision. And we'll stack those coroutines until there's an absolute mess. And then we'll not really know what's going on. And also they become really hard to debug, and it's also really hard to save the state of the game at any time. So if you want to save out the game and load it up again, it's hard to know what coroutines are running and what state they're in. We've done that twice now, left a bit of a mess for ourselves. We're getting better. We'll try not to do it again. We often, Link's a C# extension that allows you to do really, really clever things with basically no code. But it often runs terribly on mobile. Again, when you find it in the profiler, it's really easy to fix, and it's really quick to write the link in the first place. So we take the problems because it's an easy solution. The other thing we do to ourselves is static. Any kind of static in a class exists for the lifetime of the application. So the way to mess yourself up there is you have a static list of things, and you keep adding to that static list with like a reference to a texture or something. And as your game progresses, you can end up with everything in your game loaded, and you're running out of memory, and you don't know why. So you've got to be really careful with the lifetime of objects in Unity. Is hard to work out as it is with the lifetime of kind of the awake, start, on enable, on disable. That stuff is really hard to work out, but you've got to be super careful with statics as well. And from that, the nested asset dependencies going back to the when you're trying to split stuff off into the resources directory, and you end up accidentally with a lot of stuff referenced through. So like in Schizophrenic Adventure Time, one achievement referenced one shop item. The shop item referenced a couple of images, and that referenced something else. And eventually, like, just with one object that represents one achievement, we dragged in every asset in the game because we weren't careful with that. In terms of making good games, like, iterate. It's the only way you get there. Is how we get to quality, and putting it on Kickstarter and early access and getting user feedback. But none of our games have started great. Nothing's been, that's going to be amazing right from the first month. So it's really important to give yourself the time to be able to iterate and to get there. Ski Safari was finished, I think, in the December that year, but didn't launch out to the April, and all that time was polish. And Hand of Faith is about to ship beta 10. We've been shipping a beta every month. That's about 10 months we've been in beta, but hopefully it's going to ship properly in the next couple of weeks. So the other thing to take away is you got to push it. Unity is an amazing general purpose engine, but it's exactly that. It's very general. It's not great for any particular game. You don't make general games. Your game is 2D. Your game is an RTS. Your game is something. There's always constraints that you put on your game that you can exploit to make your game better, and to make it better than everyone else making a game in Unity. So one of the things we do is, while we were trying to get those draw calls down, we use that process that the server runs through to mark every object, every different model that's drawn with a different color. We're then scanning the screen to see which objects actually draw and which objects are occluded, and we use that so I can just delete a bunch of trees that you're never going to see. But yeah, you push it as hard as you can. So that's the talk.
With your Kickstarter project, something where we might have like blogged it, or we worked and see like
more details about how it went and how much you charged and what you did and all that sort of stuff?
For specifically the Kickstarter?
Yeah.
We're terrible. We don't keep a blog, but the Kickstarter's still live, and you can still see the videos and the tiers and the comments. And
How much did you charge for the people for the early access?
We have never charged subsequent people less, if you know what I mean, other than in sales. So I can't remember how much the game was in early access, but we really wanted to make sure we kind of respected those original players, and to that end, the Kickstarter backers get additional content in the game as well. Sorry, go back here.
You mentioned a while back that you had 120 scenes.
Yes.
And you would like to do that better. So what was did you have a solution to that?
So the way, and this is my fault. It's my fault not helping the environment artist who was making the scenes. So what they would do is if they wanted, each scene has kind of a hell version where everything's burning, the color palette's changed, it's got a different sky, it's got a different lighting setup. So they would duplicate the scene and then do that sky change and lighting setup change, and they put fire particles in there to make it different. What we should have done is we should have done that all in one scene and had parts of it we could turn on and off to get that without making a new scene, because that just made additional work for ourselves down the line.
Can I just ask then, how large, we're talking about an environment, right? How large are you seeing?
Environments are, in terms of, if you compare it to other games, are really, really small, because they're just little fighting arenas. They're not, you can't run beyond that row of trees or anything. So in terms of, they wouldn't be more than like a couple of 100 meters square. Yeah. But there is scenery beyond that, so you can see like mountains and stuff.
Have you translated any of your games to any language that has a very low population, like Nordic languages or something like that?
No, so it's brutal business in that case, in that to decide what languages we were going to translate into the Steam page has Google Analytics tied into it, so we can see what countries people are coming from. And while that's not a great indicator of what countries may want your game, it is an indicator. One thing we did get, we got a Hungarian person who did a full Hungarian translation and sent it to us. So we've shipped with that. That's amazing. That's like thousands and thousands of dollars worth of work. So if you want to translate it into a language, we're open to it.
Did you somehow do a Q&A on that translation?
We put a bit of it back into Google Translate to check it wasn't continuous swear words. But no, we were kind of hoping another Hungarian person would go, this is outrageous. But we did. The person that did it has done a bunch of other games as well, so they've built up credibility in that regard. Yes?
Pushing game stores things to the cloud, and you use AWS? We've tried various save into the clouds before and had some success with it. We've done for Hand of Fate. No, for Heroes Call, the mobile RPG that used Microsoft Azure to save people's profiles and to allow you to gift items to other players and allow us to update the data live. That's a lot of work, and you've got to be committed to that. And it'd be hard to argue on that game that the upside that we saw of people being able to gift items so that was worth the work to do that. Most of the platforms, like iOS has obviously iCloud, you can save the profile there. Steam has Steam Cloud, Google have
Google Play Game Services, something. But yeah, most of the platforms have a way of saving to the cloud without you having to implement something yourself. And it's important to do for some games, especially if you're free to play, or especially from a security standpoint. If you want to ensure that all the game logic happens on a server, then you have to do that. But if your design doesn't need it, then I'd absolutely avoid it, because it's work you can avoid. Yes?
Any tips or caveats about the audio side of Unity?
Audio is previously been terrible, absolutely terrible. In terms of, so the first problem you run up against is while a character's speaking, you want to duck the music and you want to duck the sound effects. So you want some concept of channels, or you want some concept of bosses. Other people call them bosses, and prior to Unity 5, Unity had no concept of channels or bosses, so we had to code that ourselves. Having said that, 5 audio's got much better. They now have channels and bosses, and they now have, you can set presets for levels on those channels and bosses. So while you're moving around the scene, you can be blended between presets. While a character's talking, you can blend in another preset. So they've really, I'm impressed with 5. They've really fixed it, because it was massively lacking before that point. We've still got custom stuff for our audio designers wanted. If you're walking along next to a river, they wanted the sound emitter to move on a path next to you as you walk down the river. So it was always in that ear, but it didn't move away from the river. So we've still got custom stuff for that. But yeah, but not too much other custom stuff. We let them put, the audio designers put their own reverbs in, and they put their own ambient noise emitters and things in. So, not a lot of custom stuff beyond the bosses. Yes?
What kind of prompted the move back to PC and console from after?
We saw mobile becoming harder and harder, and that's I think that's continued. What we saw was free to play taking over, big companies taking over, and it becoming really hard to get visibility on those stores. Even making a great product was no guarantee of success at all. And yeah, we wanted to move to Steam because while we could see that Steam was still going on the same race to the bottom, it was higher on the curve. And I don't think Steam has some of the mechanisms yet that would allow that race to the bottom to really kick off. So one of the things you can't do on Steam is, going back to our Google advert, ideally, from the Google advert, we would be able to track someone who saw the advert, clicked on the advert, and then went on to click the game. We'd be able to attribute that click of the advert to the click of the game. But we can't do that yet in Steam. They won't tell us. They won't give us any feedback that lets us to know who's done that. Now, if you were doing free to play massively on Steam, you'd need that to buy users. So. I think they're missing a couple of the mechanisms that will allow that to go gangbusters.
Yes. Where have we found all your Unity developers? Did you sort of train them up here? Or?
It's hard. That's the best thing about Unity. Like previously, when we were working Pandemic or EA or something, we had a custom engine that no one else knew, that only some guy knew how to get it into this mode, and if they were off, then you didn't really know how to get it into that mode. Or like if something broke and there was a weird keyboard shortcut to fix it, only that person knew. So the best thing about Unity is you can be using at home the same tool, absolutely free, that we're using at the office. So yeah, a couple of our staff have come out of the universities, and a couple of our staff are old kind of console developers as well. So there's a mix. But yeah, that's one good thing that's fantastic about, I guess, Unity and on Unreal now as well.
Unity 5 you mentioned, are you able
Yeah, we're looking at that for the next project, and we're looking at taking Hand of Fate over to as well, because there's some fairly good optimizations that would help us.
Better 22 now or something?
It's what, sorry?
Better 22 or something? Beta 22 now?
Yes, yeah, 22 today. You're, yeah.
And I just play around every day while watching the movie, so I just watch it.
Yeah, beta 22 today, and maybe that's got my optimization in that it doesn't render the shadows twice. That's coming because I'm poking for that. So that'd be a big win.
I don't recall, there's lots of big lists there, but
No, I don't. I looked at it this morning. I didn't see it in the list, so I'll check again. But, yeah.
How is it you managed blood? Sorry.
So I got 3 there. These you can.
That's right. You said on Walker you used UDK, is that right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. How do you find using UDK compared to UDK?
So that wasn't Unreal 4. So my UDK information is outdated. So yeah, I don't use my assessment as a fair assessment of Unreal 4 because I've heard a lot of good things about 4 that went in 3. 3 was horrible, absolutely horrible. Didn't enjoy that at all. And everything you wanted to do, it's like, there's the way that Unreal Tournament did it. Then there's a couple of different ways after that, and then there's another way, and they're all still in there. Nothing's been depreciated, and it's like, what should we use? So yeah, no, we didn't enjoy that. But yeah, I'd like to try Unreal 4 again to see how far they've come along that path.
Do you use Maya or Blender, and how do you handle your animations?
So a lot of the art's done by contractors still, so they bring their own tools to it, but it's a mix. Animation's done in Max, and we use. This is another one of my points of contention lately. We use something called Biped in Max to do our animations, and Unity support of Biped is not as good as I'd like it to be. What else do we use? I am not quite sure what the characters are made in. They come to me as a OBJ, and then we take it from there.
Well, have you heard anything with Unity's future plans to allow in-game use of bringing in animation, like to modify poses or nothing come up on the radar?
No.
It's a huge hassle to do everything off and then import when you change animation.
I'm sorry. What's the bottleneck?
It seems a huge hassle to if you want something changed, you have to redo it and then you re-import your animations.
Right. So if you're looking for changes in animations, then
For example, if they're leading on a disk, but you rescale the disk.
Right. Then you want IK is what you want, because you want IK to change the position of the hand so it now fits on the desk. I don't know. I don't see Unity making a full animation pipeline within the editor, but maybe for your case you want IK, or you want a stick to ensure no one changes the height of that desk once it's set. Sorry, man.
You were saying you're being a thorn in the side on a bunch of issues with the Unity stuff. Like, I'm guessing you're not just posting on forums. Like, have you got a rep or something, and how did you set up that relationship?
So Unity have alpha and beta lists, and that's where I do most of my moaning. Twitter's also really effective for just firing out just hate. If you target the right people, Twitter's really effective. Yeah.
And they know you now, kind of thing, do they? Or not? You're just posting something.
But I say hate. I try to keep it. I try to keep it really constructive and about a very specific problem, and try not to ruin my credibility that way.
Well, like you mentioned, you said you did a patch that you fixed the double light thing, or that.
No. I've just been.
Problem you complained about.
I've just complained about that. Yeah. Cool. Done? Cool. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for sitting through my talk.